Ladies and gentlemen, today we are here to talk about a brand new horror movie, Until Dawn, directed by David F. Sandberg, starring Ella Rubin and Michael Cimino. Now, this movie is pretty bad. Let's just get that off the boat. It's not good. I would say for a horror movie, it's not very scary, and the acting was pretty bad throughout. Now, with that being said, I don't think that this movie was completely dog shit, which I do think is very important to emphasize because there are some few redeeming qualities. You see, because up until around the midsection, I was ready to give this movie like a 3, even a 2 out of 10. None of it was really working for me for the reasons I just mentioned a moment ago. You know, the lackluster horror, the atrocious acting throughout the movie, and some other aspects of bad filmmaking like forgettable cinematography, forgettable score, just no personality to be found at all. I was prevalent and made up a majority of the first 30 to 40 minutes, and it was losing me. It was losing me bad. But there's a scene, again, no spoilers, but there's a scene around, if I had to guess, the 40-minute mark, where something happens so crazy, so bizarre, that the movie almost saves itself. Where one, it wakes you up, right? I was damn near about to take a nap one moment, and the next moment I'm like, again, no spoilers, but you know the scene I'm talking about if you have seen the movie. Up until that point, the film was quite boring, with boring characters and an unoriginal premise with pretty weak horror tropes, so the film in general was just struggling to hold my attention. There was no reason for me to be like, wow, this is good, or this is unique, or I should recommend this to a friend. All of it was pretty bland. However, when the scene happened, my attention was right on the screen. And I don't want to overhype this scene because it's nothing groundbreaking, but it is attention grabbing, and it's just so bizarre and left field, and I believe that's a good thing. In some cases, in some movies, it depends on the context of the scene and the context of the story. In this film, it needed that scene. It's almost like the movie grabs you and tells you, this is the movie you signed up for, this is the movie you're watching. The first act felt very standard Blumhouse, boring setup with boring, forgettable characters, with some trying to be witty but cheesy dialogue and a few cringe moments sprinkled throughout, but it still felt like it wanted to be taken seriously. That feeling is thrown completely out the fucking window by the second act, and we go full-blown into an almost ridiculous horror comedy thriller. So the plot of this film is we follow Clover, a young woman who, along with her friends, go searching for her long-lost sister who went missing a year prior to this story taking place. Our main group ends up finding this abandoned visitor center where they are then instantly killed by a mass killer. Now, don't worry, that's not a spoiler, because as soon as they all die, the night starts over again, they're all back alive, and they're just trapped in this place, forced to relive this night over and over and over again. And each night, the killers and monsters and terrors that visit them get worse and worse. That is the premise of this movie, and the objective is to now somehow find a way to escape this place. Simple premise, not the most unique. We've seen these stories time and time again where a character is trapped in this never-ending cycle, this never-ending loop, almost like they're trapped in their own pocket dimension. Apparently this is based off a video game of the same name, Until Dawn. I don't know. I've never heard of it. I'm not a gamer. I apologize if you're watching this review in anticipation of find out if this movie is faithful to the game or not. I personally cannot tell you that. I can only tell you if this is a good movie or not. And it's not. I would have given them more props for embracing the sort of ridiculousness of the horror that eventually does come, but they don't even embrace it themselves all the way. After the scene happens, you're thinking, oh man, I'm in for a roller coaster, better buckle up, but then you're just waiting and nothing really happens. The story never ups it again, and the ridiculousness as a whole just sort of simmers back down. It's like if you were on a boring roller coaster and, you know, nothing's really happening for the first 30, 40 minutes, but then you get this crazy loop-de-loop and you're thinking, wow, this is really fun, and you're waiting for the next loop-de-loop, but that loop-de-loop never comes. And the roller coaster just goes back to being sort of mundane again. I don't mind this horror movie not being scary. It makes it clear that this is supposed to be a almost fun, dark adventure horror survival, but it's really not all that fun either. It stays fairly predictable, and none of the monster designs really stand out, nor do the horror sequences. I think one jump scare may have startled me, but that's due to the fact of the loud fucking noise rather than a proper buildup of tension and dread, where instead of feeling terrified, I was left quite annoyed. The acting was dog shit from everybody. The main lead, Ella Rubin, she was okay. She was probably the strongest part. She was fine for the most part, but everybody else, the surrounding cast, noticeably bad, especially Ji Young Yoo. I apologize if I mispronounced her name. She was terrible in this movie. Now, the cringe writing for for many of the lines in this film, they don't help our actors, but the supporting cast had no convincing emotion behind any of their line deliveries. Especially, again, I don't mean to pick on her, but Ji Young Yoo stood out like a bad, what's the phrase? Sore thumb? Bad thorn? She stood out and it wasn't good. Now, speaking of insane line deliveries, let's go ahead and talk about the GOAT of this movie. The LeBron James of Until Dawn. The absolute all-star. I kid you not, this guy was deadass the scene stealer. And of course, I'm talking about the great Belmont Cameli as Abel. Every line delivery he did was fucking genius. I'm not being tongue-in-cheek when I say that. Me and my friend Ayush were dying in the theater every time he opened his mouth. Now, mind you, we were the only ones laughing in the theater, but that's because we were the only ones there who understood what we were witnessing. We were witnessing greatness. In the first act, I was thinking, this is a dog shit actor. But when the movie made it abundantly clear it's going to have heavy comedic elements, I ended up thinking, this is a joke. His ridiculous tone-deaf comments and line reads, this is a meme. It's supposed to be funny. Once that clicks, once you have that mindset, this character, comedy gold. I kid you not, bad movie. Usually when I recommend something like this, 100% would recommend seeing this film in a theater with friends just for his character. Again, bad movie, but my God, what a GOAT. Now, besides Belmont's iconic revolutionary performance and his hilarious lines throughout the film, and, the one fun, insane scene that happens near the end of the first act, there's nothing else this movie really offers. The story is boring, the scares are boring, and it's so unfortunate because you can tell there are elements of creativity within the horror. Like, with just a bit more effort and planning, there are ideas here that can be fleshed out into making something imaginative or special or even just fun. But they never really expand upon it. The movie settles on being just another generic Blumhouse horror movie with generic jump scares that just kind of annoy you. And overall, it just feels a little lazy, especially by the final act. No spoilers, but near the final act, our characters watch some recordings on one of their phones, and each recording is like 15 to 30 seconds long, and they play off as almost little horror vignettes, where it felt like the writer said, here's a bunch of shit that we thought of, and we wanted to use it in the movie. We don't know how to properly incorporate these into scenes in the story, but here you go anyways. Again, I never played the game. I don't know if this was a reference to the game. That's just what it felt like on screen. Now, that being said, those little, we'll call them short films, those little horror short films, they were actually pretty good and fun and way more interesting than anything else in the entire rest of the main film. There was one where, again, no spoilers, but it's shot in like a red hallway, and the monster in that scene, due to the practical effects and the way that it was shot, actually some eerie stuff. So yeah, I just thought I should mention that. In a horror movie that's an hour and 40 minutes long, there are 15 seconds where I was thinking, hey, that's pretty scary. In conclusion, if you're looking to be scared, there are way better options. If you're looking for a fun time, again, there are way better options. Despite its overall blandness, there is a strong sense of comedy, and it all comes from one person. Is it supposed to be there? Is the movie ironically or unironically funny? Some parts maybe, some parts maybe not. I mean, I don't know. Who knows? That's the genius of this performance. That is the genius of Belmont Cameli. It's not the worst horror movie of the year. It's just also not a good one. I am giving Until Dawn a 4 out of 10. I would not recommend this movie unless you have patience and unless you have a specific sense of humor. You will find a gold mine out of the character of Abel. That character alone is worth this pretty below mid movie. Okay, so for the similar recommendation, I'm gonna be going with The Cabin in the Woods, directed by Drew Goddard, starring Chris Hemsworth, Kristen Connolly, and Richard Jenkins. This is one of the most original horror movies, honestly original movies I've seen, period. Simple premise on the surface, this film follows a group of college kids arriving at a remote cabin in the woods when suddenly evil monsters start attacking them. Now you may be thinking, wow, Swans, how original. Hold your horses, because that is the point of this story. The movie is a horror comedy, and it's a satire on horror tropes and cliches that were saturated in the genre, especially in the 80s and 70s. Movies like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Friday the 13th movies, and Evil Dead. We're following two different group of characters in this film. One group are the college kids, the other group are the scientists who are manipulating all the evil, scary things that these kids are experiencing, and they're doing it behind the scenes. This movie, in an absurd, comedic way, gives sort of reason as to why these cliches were happening. Cliches such as the bad choice making you'll see in these movies, or the dumb blonde, the pothead, the whore, the final girl who's usually a virgin, leaving weapons behind for unknown reasons. And the way that this movie does it is very funny and entertaining and smart. And even though this movie is a deconstruction of an entire genre, it still feels like it has its own soul, its own purpose. It's still entertaining even if you are not entirely familiar with all these cliches and tropes. Unironically funny, it's got a good balance of horror and comedy, amazing, insane final act, but crazy, super original. If you're looking for a fun, funny horror movie, this is the one you should watch. Alright everybody, that does it for my review. I'm probably gonna do either a Sinners movie review next or just a wrap up of all the movies I watched in April. And if I do that, Sinners will be included. And I'm also rewatching the Final Destination movies in preparation for the new one coming out. I'll be doing a ranking of those movies. I still haven't forgotten about the A24 bracket, amongst other ideas that I'm currently writing as we speak. And lastly, just a quick shout out to all my subs. Thank you for subscribing. The goal is to hit 1,000 by summer, which the deadline's coming soon, but even if we don't hit it, I am grateful for everybody who's subbed and stayed tuned to the channel. I'm going to be, like I said, a lot more consistent. More videos on the way. Thank you guys. See you at the next one.